He didn't even know her birthday, but the way her lips trembled when she whispered, "Please don't kiss me unless you mean it," broke everything he thought he knew about love. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Lila Monroe's alarm rang every morning at 5:17 a.m. sharp, not 5:15, not 5:20. She liked things on the edge of precision. Order was her armor. She padded barefoot across the creaky floorboards of her tiny Brooklyn apartment. The morning smelled like hazelnut coffee and lemon dish soap, comfort scents. At 27, her life was a checklist of stability: beige sweaters, black pumps, oatmeal breakfasts, and exactly 1 hour of silence before she stepped into the chaos of Wolf and Lock capital. No one saw her when she entered the office. Not really. "Morning, Lila," chirped Ellie from reception without looking up. "Morning," Lila replied, holding her paper cup like a shield. She moved quietly through the glass tower of ambition, where dreams were traded like stocks and silence meant power. Her desk was parked outside the double mahogany doors of Damien Wolf, the company's enigmatic, ruthlessly brilliant CEO. Lila knew his life by the minute, knew he hated synthetic cologne, preferred green tea at 4 p.m. and always clicked his pen 3 times before rejecting an idea. But she didn't know him. No one did. Every morning she typed his agenda. Every evening she rewrote it to account for what he'd actually done. And every day she reminded herself that this was enough: a stable job, a paycheck, a man she secretly hopelessly loved from a distance so wide it could swallow her. But today, something was off. His door was slightly ajar. Damien Wolf hated birthdays, not just his own, which he refused to acknowledge, but birthdays in general, the forced sentiment, the obligatory calls, the cheap cake. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, watching the sunrise over Manhattan like a predator surveying his domain. His tailored charcoal suit clung to him like armor, and his tie was still perfectly knotted at 6 a.m. Lila had placed his schedule on his desk, again, like clockwork. He never acknowledged the small kindnesses, the way she left out the almond protein bars she'd noticed he preferred, the way she never asked questions when he disappeared for 2 days after the anniversary of his brother's death. She was just efficient, just quiet, and maybe that was why he noticed her more than he should. But feelings? Feelings were for people who could afford to fall, not him, not anymore. His father had taught him one thing before dying alone in their sprawling, loveless estate: people are assets, Damien. Trust no one, love nothing, control everything. He lived by that. Controlled everything, especially his heart. But when he looked at Lila lately, something cracked. He caught himself watching her when she thought he wasn't looking, the curve of her wrist when she typed, the way she chewed her pen when focused, the way she turned her pain into poise. He shook it off like an itch. But then the email came in, a reminder from HR: "Today is Lila Monroe's birthday. Let's make her feel appreciated." Damien blinked. He hadn't known, and for some reason that bothered him. Lila? She startled. She had been reorganizing his inbox, head bowed when he appeared, quiet as a ghost beside her desk. "Yes, Mr. Wolf? Can you step inside for a moment?" She followed, heart thudding, into the office that smelled of bergamot and tension. He gestured to the seat across from his desk. She sat, unsure. "I didn't know it was your birthday." She blinked. "Oh, that's okay. I didn't expect you to." He studied her face. "I should have." A silence fell between them, one so loud it said everything they weren't. And then he reached into the drawer, pulled out a tiny velvet box. "I was going to give this to a client, but I think you should have it." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. Simple, elegant, thoughtful. She stared. "I can't accept this." "You already did," he said. And then, as if pulled by something neither could name, he leaned forward slightly, then stopped. Her breath caught. "Don't kiss me," she whispered. "Not unless you mean it." His eyes darkened, but he pulled back. "I'll have your birthday bonus deposited," he said stiffly, and just like that, the walls returned. but something had already changed. Have you ever felt invisible to someone you cared about until one moment changed everything? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel seen. The bracelet was too beautiful. Leila sat at her desk that afternoon, her fingers trembling as she slid the velvet box back into her purse for the third time. The feel of the cool silver against her skin lingered like a phantom. It was just a gift, a spontaneous gesture, nothing more. But she wasn't the type of woman who received jewelry from billionaires. She was the type of woman who paid her phone bill late and let people cut in front of her at coffee shops because conflict made her nauseous. She'd said it out loud, "Don't kiss me unless you mean it." Why had she said that? Because part of her had wanted him to, and that made her feel dangerously seen. Damien couldn't focus. He was supposed to be reviewing a $200 million merger between a Singaporean firm and their East Coast private equity team. Instead, he was replaying the sound of her voice. "Don't kiss me unless you mean it." He wasn't sure what had made him lean in, or what had made him stop. But something in her eyes, so open, so full of unshed bravery, had cut through years of cold calculation. That wasn't just a secretary speaking. That was a woman asking not to be used, and for the first time in a long time, he cared whether he'd hurt someone. Damien, the voice of Robert Locke, his business partner, snapped him out of the trance. "We need to talk about Leila." That sentence made his chest tighten in ways he couldn't explain. Later that day, Leila opened an email thread between Robert Locke and Damien, mistakenly forwarded to her inbox. Her stomach dropped as she read the subject line: "Rare staff restructuring, secretary position." The body of the email was short, clinical, unfeeling. "Wolf's assistant has been with us long enough. Rotate her out with someone younger, sleeker, more adaptable. I'll prep HR." Attached was a resume, a tall blonde 23-year-old from a temp agency, and there it was, her erasure, in black and white. Her eyes stung, so it hadn't meant anything. The bracelet, the softness in his voice, that almost kiss, it was all just a mirage. She stood, shakily, and walked to the elevator, her purse clenched tight in her hand. He found her on the rooftop. She had gone there to cry, thinking no one would come, but Damien had followed the trace of her perfume, subtle and warm, like honey and rain. "Leila." She turned, startled and angry. "I read the email," she said, "about replacing me." His jaw clenched. "You weren't supposed to see that. That's your defense." Her voice cracked. "You give me a bracelet and look at me like I matter, and then toss me aside like I'm one of your mergers." "I didn't approve that decision," he said. "Robert, don't lie to me, Damien. Not now." He took a step forward. She took one back. "I see you, Leila," he said, quieter now. "I see you more than I want to." She looked up at him, tears glistening. "Then prove it." And before he could think, before he could stop himself, he kissed her. Not like a boss, not like a billionaire, like a man drowning in regret, hope and longing. Like someone who had just realized he'd been starving for years, and she was the only thing that ever tasted real. When they pulled apart, her hand rested on his chest, but her voice was distant. "You're going to let me go anyway, aren't you?" "I don't want to," he said. "But you will," she whispered. "Have you ever been torn between trusting your heart and protecting it? Drop a eye if you've ever wanted to believe someone but feared they were just passing through." Leila didn't quit. Not immediately. She came back the next morning like she always did, hair tied in its signature low twist, black pencil skirt, crisp blouse. On the outside, nothing had changed, but inside, everything was trembling. She didn't wear the bracelet, didn't meet his eyes, didn't speak unless necessary, and that silence screamed louder than any confrontation ever could. The kiss had been real. She felt it in the way her lips still tingled when the elevator doors opened on his floor. But if she let herself believe it mattered to him, then losing him would break her. So she convinced herself it was a mistake, a billionaire's whim, a weak moment. It had to be, because anything else would hurt too much. He watched her from his office window. Every movement was calculated now. Every glance, every pause, every word she didn't say was like a needle under his skin. She hadn't worn the bracelet. That told him everything. or so he thought. He told himself it was better this way. Business was cleaner without emotion. People leave, people lie, people take what they want and vanish. He had learned that lesson the hard way, and no amount of soft eyes and brave whispers could change that. "Don't kiss me unless you mean it." Her voice still haunted him. He had meant it, but he wasn't ready for what came after meaning it. 3 days passed. He didn't call her in. She didn't linger by his door. They spoke only through emails and sticky notes now, sterile communication that cut like glass. Finally, late on Thursday, she stood at his doorway, hesitant. "You have a call with Zurich at 4, she said. He didn't look up. I saw it. A pause. She shifted her weight. "Is this how it's going to be now?" He closed his laptop slowly, looked up at her. Finally, his expression was unreadable. "What do you want it to be?" Her throat tightened. "I don't know. Then I can't give you an answer." The silence after that was deafening. She left without another word. Robert Locke cornered Damien in the boardroom that night. "I'm bringing in Julia next week," he said, "the temp for your assistant role." Damien's face darkened. "I said I'd handle that." "You haven't," Robert snapped. "You're not yourself, Wolf. You've been off all week. Whatever's going on with your little secretary, fix it or end it." "She's not my little secretary," Damien said sharply. "Then what is she?" Damien didn't answer, because he didn't know. That night, Lila sat on the subway, her reflection blurred in the window. She had almost cried at her desk that afternoon. Almost. She hated how much she missed him, even when he was 10 feet away. "Don't kiss me unless you mean it." Why did he do it? Why would a man like Damien Wolf kiss someone like her, only to go cold again? She needed to protect herself. So the next morning, she did something bold. She dropped a letter on his desk before he arrived. It read, "Mr. Wolf, this will be my final week with the company. Thank you for the opportunity and experience. I wish you continued success. Sincerely, Lila Monroe." She didn't wait for his reaction, because if he cared, he'd come after her. And if he didn't, she wouldn't have to keep pretending her heart didn't already belong to someone who refused to hold it. Have you ever walked away from someone just to see if they'd fight for you? Comment if you've ever let go, hoping they'd come running. Wolf and Locke Capital held one mandatory company-wide event per year, a luxury strategy retreat in upstate New York. Leela had never been invited before. Admins weren't expected to attend, so when her name appeared on the finalized guest list, room booked, itinerary emailed, she blinked in disbelief. She was leaving in 3 days, just 2 days before her resignation would take effect. She debated skipping it entirely, but a small rebellious voice whispered, "Go, just once. Go somewhere you weren't meant to disappear." The sky was heavy with September clouds as she stood waiting for her assigned rideshare to the retreat site. When the black Tesla pulled up and the tinted window lowered, Damien was behind the wheel. Her stomach twisted. "This must be a mistake," she said, clutching her overnight bag. "No mistake," he replied calmly. "The rest of the carpool cancelled. You're stuck with me." She hesitated, then got in. The silence inside the car was sharp enough to cut steel. 30 minutes passed before either of them spoke. "You weren't supposed to come," Damien said at last, his voice low. "You weren't supposed to care," she shot back. He glanced at her. "I didn't authorize your removal, but you didn't stop it either. Touché." The resort was beautiful in a way that made your heart ache. Old oak trees, a lake that reflected the grey sky like cracked glass, and soft jazz humming through the lobby like a heartbeat. Of course their rooms were next to each other. Of course the walls were thin. She could hear him sigh at night, could hear him walking, pacing, and one evening after dinner there was a knock at her door, not loud, almost uncertain. She opened it to find him standing there in a black t-shirt and jeans. Damien Wolf in casual clothes was disarming. "Couldn't sleep," he said, almost like an apology. She stepped aside. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the air between them buzzing with everything unsaid. "I read your resignation letter again," he said. Lila stared at her hands. "I meant it." "I know," he said, "but I'm still hoping you'll change your mind." She looked up. "Why? You can replace me in a second. You were going to." He didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. "I don't want someone else." "Why not?" He swallowed. Because they don't make the world quieter like you do. She blinked. What? You walk in and the noise in my head slows down. That hasn't happened in years. The silence between them pulsed. I don't need you to save me, Damien, she whispered. I don't want to save you, he said. I just don't want to lose you. He reached out slowly, like someone learning gentleness for the first time. His fingers touched hers, and she didn't pull away. Can love grow in the quiet spaces when two people stop pretending they're not afraid? Drop a fuck if you've ever felt someone inch closer when words ran out. It rained the next night. Not a soft cinematic drizzle, but a raw, pounding storm that rattled windows and soaked the retreat grounds in cold, relentless sheets. The event's final dinner was cancelled. The fireplace in the lodge's main hall burned low, flickering shadows across wooden beams. Lila sat curled in a corner armchair, tea in hand, watching the storm splatter across the window. She didn't expect him to join her, but he did. Damien walked in, his black coat soaked, hair a little damp. For once he looked human. Mind if I sit? She shrugged slightly. Free country. He settled into the armchair across from her. The silence between them was familiar now, an old friend that lingered just long enough to make everything matter. Then Lila said softly, "You don't even know my middle name." His brow furrowed. "What? You gave me jewelry, you kissed me, but you don't even know who I am, Damien." He looked at her, really looked at her. She didn't blink. "My middle name is Claire," she said. "I like sour candy. I hate cilantro. And when I was 9, my mother left us with a note on the refrigerator that said, 'I can't do this anymore.'" Her voice trembled, but she kept going. "My dad went quiet for 2 years after that. I'd sit at the kitchen table and talk to the empty chair next to me, like she was still there." She laughed once, sharp and hollow. "So yeah, when you kissed me, it felt like someone saw me for the first time in a long time. And when you pulled away, it felt like she left all over again." The silence afterward was thunderous. Damien didn't speak, not because he didn't care, but because her truth hit something buried in him. Too deep, too painful, too real. He left the room quietly. Leela watched him go, her chest aching. She thought that was it. But 2 hours later, she returned to her room and found something strange. The door was ajar. Inside, a small manila folder sat on her bed. Her name was written on the tab. She opened it. Inside were printed emails, memos, HR documents, every single one from Damien. "Do not approve assistant switch. I want Lila Monroe to stay. She's the only one who understands how I operate." All time-stamped before the replacement email Robert had sent. And on the final page, "I didn't stop it because I didn't think I deserved her." Her breath hitched. He had tried to fight for her, but he hadn't fought for himself. She found him by the lake, hood up, staring at the storm-washed water. "You could have just told me," she said, holding the folder. He didn't turn. "You wouldn't have believed me." "You're wrong," she whispered. "I wanted to." Silence. Then, barely audible, he said, "My brother died 5 years ago, overdosed alone in a hotel I paid for. I never saw it coming. I was too busy closing a deal in Dubai." She stepped closer. "He was the only person I ever let close. I thought if I let someone in again, I'd lose them too." His voice cracked. "So I kept you out because you were getting too close." A pause. "But then you said, 'Don't kiss me unless you mean it,' and I realized I did. I do, I just don't know how to stay." Leela didn't say anything for a long time. Then softly, "I don't want a perfect man, Damien. I want an honest one." He looked at her. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Me too." They stood in the storm for a beat, the lake behind them, the sky rumbling overhead. Then she reached out and took his hand, not as a gesture of forgiveness, but as an invitation to begin again. The storm passed, not just in the sky, but between them. The next morning, the fireplace lounge was quiet, lit only by soft orange flames and the hush of wind through the trees outside. Leela sat barefoot on a couch with her knees tucked under her, wearing an oversized retreat sweatshirt and cradling a cup of hot cocoa. Her heels had finally been retired. She looked less like a secretary and more like a person rediscovering herself. Damien sat beside her, not across from her, not behind a desk. Beside her. "You're not at all who I thought you were." she said quietly. Good, he said, sipping black coffee. I've spent a lot of money making sure people don't know who I am. She smiled. A billionaire drinking gas station coffee and socks. Wow. He gave her a look. These are $400 cashmere socks. She snorted into her cocoa. Of course they are. The tension between them had softened. The armor had dropped. There were no negotiations now, just presence. They spent the day walking the trails behind the resort. He held branches aside for her. She threw a pine cone at him. They laughed. They weren't Layla the secretary and Damien the CEO anymore. They were just Layla and Damien. At one point, they stopped by the lake. He looked at her as she skipped a rock across the glassy surface. "You know the first thing I noticed about you?" he asked. She turned, eyebrows raised. "My coffee orders." He shook his head. "Your silences. You never used words to take up space, but somehow you still filled the whole room." She looked down, cheeks pink. "And you," she said, "are so used to people fearing you. I think you've forgotten how to be liked." He blinked. "That's accurate," he admitted, "but I like you anyway," she whispered. He reached for her hand. This time, she let him. Back at the lodge, the heating in Layla's room failed. "It's 2025, she muttered, teeth chattering as she wrapped herself in 2 blankets. How do millionaires run retreats without working radiators? A knock at the door. Damien, again, this time holding a spare blanket and a sheepish look. "Your room's freezing," he said. "Come to mine." She hesitated. He raised a hand. "No expectations, just I don't want you to get sick." She followed him. His suite was warm, dimly lit by bedside lamps, and smelled faintly of cedarwood. He handed her the blanket, then stepped back like a gentleman. "Take the bed, I'll take the couch." "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "It's a king, we're adults, and you've already kissed me, remember?" He looked at her, half smiling. "I remember everything." She turned off the lamp, and they lay there, not touching at first, just breathing. Then his hand found hers under the covers. No heat, no rush, just peace. Hours later, neither had moved. "I used to imagine moments like this," Lila whispered into the dark. He turned his head on the pillow toward her. "With me?" She smiled faintly. "Not you specifically, just someone who didn't make me feel like a background character in my own life." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to make you feel that way ever again. I don't want to feel invisible," she said, "to anyone, but especially not to you. You're not invisible, Lila." He paused. "You're unforgettable." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she believed it. The retreat ended too soon. Back in New York, everything changed. The fluorescent lights, the sharp-heeled clicks in the marble lobby, the pressure in Damien's shoulders returned like a weight he'd only borrowed relief from. Leela's desk was still outside his office, but the warmth between them, the freedom of their time upstate, was buried beneath layers of distance and discomfort. They hadn't talked about what would happen now, neither dared to ask. At 9 a.m. Monday, Damien was summoned by the board. A scandal was brewing, an investment leak. Someone from his executive team had gone rogue. Wolf and Locke Capital was on the line, and Robert Locke was furious. "You've been distracted," Robert snapped. "This thing with your assistant, everyone's talking. You're sleeping with someone who's resigning, Damien. That's not leadership, that's liability." "I never confirmed anything," Damien growled. "You didn't have to. She shows up at your hotel room. She delays her resignation after a trip with you. This isn't just messy, it's dangerous." Robert slammed down a folder. Inside were photos, blurry, zoomed in. Damien holding Leela's hand by the lake, their silhouettes standing close under the moonlight. "Find a way to fix this," Robert hissed. "Publicly, now." That afternoon, Leela walked into the boardroom, expecting a normal scheduled briefing. Instead, she found Damien sitting with PR reps and 2 board members, and on the center table, her resignation letter. "Leela," he said, standing, "we need to discuss your transition." Her face fell. "What?" "I've accepted your resignation effective immediately," he said, his voice flat. "You'll receive severance and a confidentiality bonus." She blinked. "You're firing me?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm protecting you. This is damage control. I don't need protecting," she said. "I needed honesty." He didn't meet her eyes. "You told me I wasn't invisible," she whispered. But you just erased me in front of a room of strangers. Silence. Then she laughed, quiet, bitter. You kissed me, you held me, and now you're buying my silence. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Damien. Her voice broke. You said I made the world quieter. But the moment things got loud, you let me go. She walked out. No goodbye, no second look, just gone. Damien stood frozen in the boardroom. Everyone else left. But he didn't move, because the moment the door closed behind her, he knew he'd done the one thing he promised not to do. He'd made her feel invisible. Again, he showed up at her apartment, but she didn't answer. He called, texted, waited on the sidewalk in the rain. No response, not even a flicker from the window. Inside, Lila sat on the floor, knees to her chest, shaking. Because just when she finally believed she was worth choosing, he made her feel like a scandal to clean up, not a woman to fight for. And this time, she wouldn't beg to be seen. Have you ever opened your heart, only to feel like a mistake someone tried to erase? Drop a Canada in the comments if someone made you feel invisible when you finally let them in. She didn't go to work. She didn't respond to HR. She didn't tell her friends. Lila Monroe simply disappeared from the building where she'd spent 3 years giving everything and expecting nothing. The days passed slowly. She rearranged furniture, cleaned drawers she'd never opened, found an old birthday card from her dad she almost threw away but didn't. One night she stood in front of her mirror, looking at herself like a stranger. The woman in the reflection looked tired, strong, sad. I don't want a perfect man, Damien. I want an honest one. She'd meant that. She still did, but honesty didn't mean easy, and love didn't mean safety. If she reached out now, she might get hurt again, and this time she might not recover. He didn't sleep, didn't speak much either. Work ran like clockwork, but his heart refused to reset. Robert Locke kept congratulating him on containing the scandal, as if Lila had been the fire, but Damien knew the truth. She wasn't the fire, she was the warmth, and now his world was colder than ever. He reread her resignation letter, again and again, until the words blurred into questions. Why had he let fear win? Why did he still believe he had to lose something in order to love it? Why couldn't he just once choose differently? He walked to the drawer where he kept the bracelet, still in its box, still untouched since the day she stopped wearing it. He ran his thumb over the velvet. Don't kiss me unless you mean it. He had meant it. He meant it now. But meaning something wasn't enough. Not anymore. Layla checked her mailbox out of habit. A small, cream-colored envelope waited inside. No return address, just her name. She opened it on the stairs, breath-catching as she unfolded the thick paper. Leela, I let you go the day I should have fought for you. Not because I didn't want you, but because I didn't think I deserved you. You told me not to kiss you unless I meant it, and I did. Every second of it. I still do. You were never invisible to me. You were the first thing I ever saw clearly. I don't know how to be perfect, but I want to be honest. If you still want honesty, if you still want me, I'll be waiting. Tonight, at the rooftop where we first kissed. No pressure, just hope. Jerome. She stood at her kitchen counter, letter in hand. The clock read 7:04 p.m. The rooftop was 20 minutes away. Her keys sat beside her phone. Every part of her screamed for safety, for logic. But the part of her that believed in late-night fires and quiet glances and storm-soaked kisses, that part whispered, go. She didn't change her clothes. She didn't do her makeup. She just grabbed her coat, locked the door and ran. Have you ever had one moment where you had to choose, protect your heart or risk everything for it? Drop a step till you've ever had to decide, stay safe or show up anyway. Leela pushed open the rooftop door, the wind tugging at her coat. Same skyline, same chilled September air, same rooftop where everything had shifted with one kiss. But this time, she wasn't the same woman. She wasn't small anymore. She wasn't afraid of being seen. And Damien Wolfe was already there, standing at the edge, hands in his coat pockets, staring at the city like it might answer his prayers. He turned, his eyes widened, just slightly, but the breath he took, it was unmistakable. Relief and awe, like he hadn't believed she'd come. She walked toward him, slowly. He didn't speak first. He just watched her, like something sacred might shatter if he moved too quickly. "I got your letter," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't." He nodded. "Why did you?" he asked. She took a breath. "Because despite everything, you're the only person who ever looked at me like I wasn't temporary." His jaw clenched. "And because I realized something." "What?" "I don't want to be invisible anymore. Not in life, not in love, and not with you." He stepped closer. The space between them vanished like breath on glass. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Not at choosing people, not at staying, not at love. But you showed up," she said. He looked down, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the velvet box, the silver bracelet. "I don't know what comes after this," he said, "but I know one thing." He opened the box, offered it to her like it was more than jewelry, like it was the start of a promise. "I want you, not in secret, not in silence, not on a schedule, just you." Leela's throat tightened. She looked at the bracelet, then at him, then she took it and slid it on, not because she needed the gift, but because she chose the man offering it. He stepped forward, slowly, no pressure, just hope. His voice was barely a whisper. "May I kiss you?" She smiled. "You already did. Now kiss me like you mean it." He did, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear, no boardrooms or silence or past regrets. Just two people choosing each other, completely. She walked through the glass doors of Wolf Capital, not in heels and a black skirt, but in a powder blue dress with lace sleeves, her fingers laced with his. Everyone turned, because Damien Wolf wasn't walking in alone. He was walking in with his fiancée, the woman he almost lost, the woman who had taught him that love wasn't about perfection or power, it was about presence. She had once been just his secretary, now she was everything. Have you ever learned to believe that you were finally worthy of love after years of hiding? Comment, fight, I chose me if you've ever walked away from fear and into love. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.